tripod. So I want to always reiterate to you about the practice, because given that I'm competing with your mind, and your mind has more access to you than I do, that I have to check in with you from time to time, because even though I say the things I say, when I ask people where they're at, I can see that they're still listening to something else, right? Because they keep repeating what I said is not the case, right? But that's the way this goes, right? Because you have a bad habit of being who you think you are, right? And that obviously is not a good idea. And hopefully one of the reasons you're here is because you've come to recognize that. You can't get out of prison until you know you're in prison. You can't get free until you accept that you're not.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. You, who you think you are, has nothing else to fall back to. That's why it's accurate for me to say you'll get nothing out of this. You can't get anything out of this because there's nothing to get here. This is about giving up on thinking that there's something to get when there's nothing to get. Because what there is to get here, you already got. And therefore, you would say what you say, because if you're identified with what you're not, you're not even aware of what you are. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, just be patient, just be patient, and keep practicing meditation the way it's meant to be done, right? And it's very, very important to understand that the practice itself is doing something, right? The practice itself is doing something, and one of the ways to understand that is that it is processing what's necessary to get processed for you to discover the truth of yourself and be that, right? So in spite of you, the meditation practice works in spite of you, right? In spite of your complaints, in spite of your ideas about whether it's working or not, right? If you're doing it correctly, it's working.
And carrying it over into everyday life, I feel like I just get sucked into everyday life, and it's gone.
That's right. That's how it goes in the beginning, okay? But you see the way you get leverage, right? Because it's true. You meditate for 30 or 40 minutes, right? And the rest of the 24 hours, you're back in the shit, right? But the way you get leverage with that is start to understand that the practice is not meant to only be formal. Therefore, if you start to actively, intentionally, consciously practice what we're doing here all the time, that's the leverage. Mindfulness, yeah. What I'm talking about is applying what you're doing in meditation all the time, right? Because what you're doing in meditation is you're moving attention out of the thought process, right? Well, so one of the things that is saying is that if you are identified with the thought process and you are living in the thought process when you're not doing formal meditation, right? Then you need to start paying attention to that and notice how in the head you are, how you're living is a thought process, not a heart process. How you're living is a thought process, not an awareness, right? And so there's the practice. And life is set up to help you, right? Life is set up to help you. Every time you suffer, right, it's because you're out of sync. Every time you suffer, it's because you believe your good ideas instead of reality. So you're suffering. If you understand that, if you have that understanding and then you apply it to your moment-to-moment experience as you go through the day, you're practicing all the time. Your life is a practice, right? Your life is a practice. Yeah, I was talking about most people's lives are about that, right? Are being always paying attention to that, right? When you learn to meditate, you start discovering that there's a this, not just a that, right? And so as you progress in the process, what I said is that in order to function effectively in the world, you can't just be looking this way, you have to be looking this way.
I like that kind of clicks for me.
Yeah, good. So you have to be aware of the internal reality, you have to be aware of what's happening in the thought process and the emotional reality, the physical reality, and what's happening out here, right? And the practice is to be aware of both of these things and to notice when this is not a match for that. To notice that what you're thinking is in conflict with what's going on. To notice that, right? And the practice is to then examine what would have to happen, what would have to be different in order for that not to be the case. Yeah. Which is that I'm conceding, I'm making a concession when I answer questions because I'm talking to who you're not when I'm answering questions, right? Yeah, but I have to accept that, right? Because you're not yet ready to be anybody else. So I can only talk to who you're being, right? Yeah. But the reality of it is what you're referring to is true, you know, that, and that's why I said what I said to Bob in that class. I'm not going to answer that question. I want you to stop identifying with the questioner, right? So when you ask a question, I want you to look and see who's asking that question, right? Because you see, the reality of it is that to ask a question, now watch, this is non-duality. To ask a question means you're separating yourself from reality and looking at it and questioning it and judging it and trying to figure it out with the idea that if you get it figured out, it'll work. And that's never going to happen because it's not figure-outable. Okay, so that's never going to happen, right? Yeah. And the other thing about what you said, will we ever get, right? And the reason I said what I said is I don't know, and the reason I say I don't know is because you're already there, okay? So I can't tell you whether you'll give up on what you're doing that doesn't work. I can't tell you that. That's up to you, you know? You know, in the old days, when the guru thing was popular, right? If you went to the guru and you wanted to become a disciple or you wanted to become a devotee or a student, whatever word you want to use, right? You approach the guru and you ask, will you take me on, you know, to be a student, or take me on to be a devotee? Usually the teacher or the master or the Zen master or whatever would say no, generally just say no to anybody that asked. To start the process, right? And if you persisted enough that the teacher or the master felt that there was enough of a commitment that would see you through, then they would concede to be your teacher. And in the old days, that would then mean that you then became a servant to the teacher. You know, you would live with the teacher or you would live in a monastery, whatever the case may be. And for 10 or 12 years, you would be there and you would be serving the master and serving the other students and be given chores to do and things to chant and practice and study and so forth. And after 10 or 12 years, I mean, at the time, it depends on the particular person, but I'm just saying 10 or 12 years is a general thing. You might be ready. After 10 or 12 years, you might be ready. And so the way that's talked about in the teachings is you're being prepared you're being prepared to hear, you're being prepared for the teaching, you're being prepared to be able to get the teaching, to receive the teaching. And prior to that, you couldn't receive the teaching. And what that process is like training horses, right? When horses are being trained, the trainer stands in the middle of the ring, right, and has the horse on a rein, and the wild horse in the beginning is just fighting, right, just fighting, you know, resisting, fighting, trying to get away, right, like your mind. And what the trainer does is just hold on to the rein, and the horse starts to run, and he just stands here, and he doesn't chase the horse or try and stop the horse. Just lets the horse run, just keeps turning, let the horse run, until the horse is exhausted and can't run anymore, right? And only then is he ready. Then the trainer will approach the horse and start the next process of mounting the horse, right? And that's the same thing as the guru-devotee relationship. The guru says, okay, you wanna be a student? Okay, you're a student, okay? Now go wash the dishes, sweep the floor, bring me my food, right? So right away, the student is like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't come here for that. I didn't come here to be your servant. I came here to be your student. And the master would say, that's right, you are my student. Now go wash the dishes, right? So for many people, that would be the end right there, right? For many people, that would be the end. They would say, no, no way, man. This is a cult. I'm leaving, right? So that would be like the untrainable wild horse, you know, that was not going to ever accept the training process, right? And then there would be other people who would be willing to trust the guru, which is necessary. I mean, part of the whole process of being a devotee and going through the training that a guru does with people is you have to surrender to the guru. You have to get to a place of not knowing. You have to get to a place of being what in Zen is called the beginner's mind. You have to give up what you think, right? You have to give up what you've got figured out and how you think it all is, right? But that's not going to happen easily because you're used to identifying with your mind, right? And so you'll be the wild horse. You'll keep resisting, even if you don't tell the guru that you're resisting. You'll resist in your mind, you know? And you'll keep resisting until that starts to wear off and you really are completely surrendered and completely open and receptive. Then the guru will teach you, you see. Before that, it's like this back and forth thing, you know, that like it is here, right? That you hear the teaching and then the mind comes in and but how about this? You see, that's the wild horse, right? The only difference between things now and then is that in the modern world, right, given the way things are different now from the old days, right? Even in India, right? People don't have 12 years to put in, right? People just don't have 12 years to put in, right? You've got to work, you've got, you know, all that other thing. You can't go to a monastery. And so now the way things are is that the cat's out of the bag because Ramana Maharshi is one of the people who took the cat out of the bag and said, okay, we're not going to do it that way. I'm just going to tell you the truth and then you will either succeed in the process of realizing it or you won't. Right? That's the breakthrough that happened when Ramana Maharshi was around. Him and Nisargadatta was another version of that. Papaji was another version of that. This became the direct path that Rupert Spira speaks of, okay? But the difference now is you're on your own. You know, I will give you the teaching, right? I will give you the instruction to practice meditation, which will help you to stay connected to the rein, right? The rein, the leash, right? I'll give you that to work with. But then you got a wild horse in your head and you're either going to be able to stay with the process until that horse runs out of energy, right? And that horse will start to run out of energy faster through the practice of meditation, right? And so now you have to be the trainer and hold the rein of your own mind as it goes wild, right? And learn that this position, this place in which there's no movement, the trainer's not moving, they're staying in one place, right? This place of no movement is the place in which it's possible to experience happiness, peace, and well-being, regardless of how crazy the mind is or how crazy the world is, right? But that process is one that you have to deal with yourself. You know, you have to trust the reality that you're being presented with as being true and real. You see, in the very beginning, the student sees the master as different from them. The student sees the master as an enlightened person. And so the student is a person wanting to become an enlightened person. So they want to get what the master has, right? But the master or the teacher knows that he's not different, right? But he understands why you think he is different, right? So we'll play that out. We'll play that out. If you think I'm different and I'm the master and I'm enlightened and you're not enlightened, then you go sweep the floor, right? And that's one of the reasons why when a student becomes enlightened, right, they smack the master in the face, right? They smack the master in the face and the master says, oh, wonderful, wonderful, right? Because the student finally realized that they're the same, they're not different, right? The gig is up, the joke is over, right? And then typically the master will, depending upon the student, give the student permission to teach. And then you have another teacher, you see. That's the way it goes. But so the way it is here is you really have to take responsibility for the training process, right? And so you will do what you see other people do here, and you will do what you do, which is complain, continue to try and figure out different things to do that'll work, right? Like that. And you just have to do that until you're done. You just have to do that until you see, until you wake up and realize you never had to do any of this. You were there the whole time. You were there the whole time, right? But you understand? So you're there the whole time, but you see who you were being when you asked me that question is the horse. Right? So that's an analogy that can be very useful if you come to understand what's going on there, right? And then there are things you can do if you understand that you have to take responsibility for your own process of enlightenment, right? There are things that you can do to make that a little less painful, right? You know, by meditating more, right? By studying more, by deepening your understanding of the whole process, right? And so that's why I encourage you to do that, right? See, if you're going to be here and you're going to do it half-assed, you're really causing yourself a lot of unnecessary suffering. You know what I mean? But if you're going to be here and you're really serious and you really have an unwavering commitment to wake up and realize the truth, right? Then you have to stay, you have to develop a tolerance of this experience, right? Because it's just part of the process. It's just part of what has to happen for your mind to take its true place. The true place of your mind is in service to you, not you in service to it, right? And so for that shift to happen, right, you have to wear out, you have to wear out the identification with the thinking process and the identification with the ideas you have about the whole thing until you get tired enough to give all that up. Yeah, and when you get tired enough to give all that up and you really, really do give it up, then it's like, oh, I was always here. That's one of the reasons why people who wake up start laughing. It's like, what the hell was I thinking? Right? I've seen this happen with interactions between teachers and students, right? And one of the ways that I saw it happen was with Papaji, who was a student of Brahmana Maharshi's, right? And I was watching him interact with one of the students at one point, and the student was doing what students do, you know, asking questions, saying yes, but, no, but what about this? Finally, Papaji just looked at him and said, stop, just stop. And the person stopped. And then the person started laughing, right? Because when they stopped, there was a gap. There was just enough of a gap opening for them to see what was going on. So they started laughing, and Papaji started laughing, right? And then the person said to the teacher, "This is it? You mean this? This is it?" And he said, "Yeah, this." And they said, "Oh my God." In the meantime, the other students in the room didn't know what the hell he was talking about. You see how it is? You see how it is? So you can't see the way it is until you take the colored glasses off, you see. The colored glasses are the thinking activity, right? That's distorting everything that's coming into the system, right? And so it's very important for you to understand this process by its very nature is going to be uncomfortable because you're a snake shedding its skin. You're a zebra changing your stripes. It's that profound in terms of what's happening. Right? But the thing that will motivate you to do that is the understanding that you have no alternatives. It's either this or it's back to what you already were doing, and you wouldn't be here unless you already had serious doubts about whether that's ever going to work, see. And one of the things, I was listening to Ramesh Balsekar the other day, and he said, life as it exists in the flow of life. In the flow of life, it's impossible to experience happiness. This is what the Buddha meant when he said life is suffering. In the flow of life, it's impossible to experience happiness. In other words, if your happiness is a function or dependent upon the circumstances of your life, that's never going to work. It can't work because life, the nature of life itself is like this, up and down. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, sometimes you're confused, sometimes you're clear, sometimes you're happy, sometimes that's life. There's no getting out of it. There's no getting out of it, right? So if you're committed to that reality having to work, you're screwed, right? But what does work, right, is to recognize that it's not about the circumstances, it's about how you're relating to the circumstances, right? So life doesn't have to be different, right? But the way you're relating to it has to be different. You have to stop expecting life to be something other than it is, right? So the way you're relating to it is unrealistic for most people. It's unrealistic because you're playing God. You're saying, oh, I know the way it's supposed to be, and that's not correct, right? Well, that's not going to work. And the reason it's not going to work is because while you are God, right, while you are God, you don't know that at the moment. And so now you've separated yourself from reality, and you're going to sit back and judge reality. That's what you're doing, isn't it? Yeah, when you say it shouldn't be raining when it's raining, you're judging reality. You're sitting back and you're separating yourself from reality and judging reality, right? What the teachings tell us and what the practices tell us is that you're not separate from that thing you think you're separate from. That you are that thing you think you're separate from. And if you realize that and stop pretending to be separate from it or stop believing you're separate from it, right, then there's no problem. How can there be a problem? How can there be a problem with the weather when you wake up and realize you are the weather? How can you have a problem with raining when you are the rain? How can you have a problem with life when you are life? That's non-duality, right? Because the teachings and the practices are telling us the idea you have about yourself being separate is an illusion. It's not true. You're not separate from the way it is. And if you're not separate from the way it is, then you are the way it is. And if you are the way it is, you can't be having a problem. You see what I'm saying? You can't be having a problem because there's no place to have a problem. Because you're being what it is. That's non-duality. If who you think you are doesn't exist and that's not here, right? If you take that away, what is here? If you take that away, what is here? Everything, right? But now the who you thought you were isn't here, and what is here is everything, and you're everything. Now, how are you going to have a problem? See, that's the shift in the way you're relating to it, right? That's the shift in the way you're relating to it. There is no problems in the world at all. It's when you think you're separate from the world and you're thinking about it that you cause problems and you create problems. So, I really want to invite you and encourage you to stay with the process. To stay with the process. Because if you stay with the process and you understand what happens with the horse, right? Then you can relax and understand that just like the horse, there's nowhere else you're going to be able to go. That horse has no alternative, right? There's no alternative. Right? He's either going to have a heart attack and die from exhaustion, right? Or surrender to the trainer. Either way. And in your case, you're either going to have a heart attack and die from exhaustion, or you're going to live out your life until you wear your body out and it dies, right? And you will never surrender enough to be able to ride the horse. And like one of my favorite teachers used to say, it's much easier to ride the horse in the direction it's already going. Right? It's much easier to live life in relationship to the way life is already going. Stop resisting. Stop thinking your ideas about it trump the way it is. No, your ideas about it don't trump the way it is. So if you are living with this understanding, right, then as you go through your life every day, moment to moment experiences, right, you're being the trainer and the horse. You're being the trainer and the horse. You're driving your car. Somebody cuts you off, right? The horse goes crazy, right? Now the question is, are you the horse or the trainer? If you're the trainer, you're just still silent, observing the horse being crazy, right? And as you do that, the horse will run out of gas because it needs you to identify with it to exist. Separate, right? But if you stop identifying with it, it will start to lose its energy, start to calm down, right? This is why they say in meditation, as you sit, the mind will calm down. Because when you're sitting there, you're being the trainer, you're being the awareness, right? The mind is the horse, right? But if you just stay in the seat, stay in your seat, stay still, abide as the self, as Mooji says. Let the thing do whatever it wants to do, right? Let it fight as much as it wants to fight. It can't win. This is what you have to understand. It can't win because you're the source. You're the source. It's a subset of you. How can it be greater than you when it's a subset of you, right? And that's what'll get you through, right? That's what'll get you through. If you keep paying attention in such a way where you abide as the stillness, abide as the silence, abide as the center, right? That gradually you'll start to notice that your emotions go up and they come down. Your thoughts are confusion, clarity. All this is changing, unstable all the time, right? But gradually you begin to experience what it's like to be that which doesn't move. And as that happens, what's moving that used to be so disturbing and upsetting and troubling, right, stops having any effect whatsoever. You start to experience what it's like to be the trainer, not the horse, right? And as that process continues, right, you can actually enjoy the experience, right? Because you're no longer the horse, you're no longer the monkey.
Well, you'd be both, really.
Well, when you become both, there's no separation, right? So it's not really both, right? It's just like what I said earlier, that you're God, but you don't know it. You're God, but you don't know it right now. So we have to deal with it that way, right? But when you do know it, right, then the personality and the source are the same thing, right? That's why what Ramesh Balsekar says is when you wake up, you remove the blockage, right, where you're disconnected from the source, right? And when you remove the blockage, then the person and the source are the same thing, right? So I've given you all you need, so all you have to do now is become enlightened.
We already are.
Yeah, we already are.
Yeah, but you see, that's the horse. That's a smart horse, right? That's a smart horse.